Welcome to The Whole View. I'm Stacy Toth, Real Everything. I'm here each week to dive deeper into how we can find happiness and health inside and out through self love, body positivity, and discovering new ways to be our best selves. Before we get started, a reminder this podcast is for general education purposes and is not intended to diagnose, advise, or treat any physical or mental illness. And we always recommend that you see a licensed health professional accordingly. This week, I'm excited to welcome Sonia Jhas, who is an award winning mindset and wellness expert and no stranger to adversity. As the cross cultural child of immigrants, she struggled with identity, purpose, body image, and all the negative self talk that comes from being misaligned with one's values. Sonia knew instinctively that she deserved better, and so she gave up her skyrocketing corporate career, which I actually want to have a conversation with on Patreon with you because I also left my corporate career and began searching for a new path that resonated with her core and eventually transformed her life through deep analysis, education, determination, and willpower. And through that journey, uncovered a deep passion for wellness as well as a driving desire to help others. Now, a mindset and wellness coach, Sonia has taken these hard earned lessons and made it her mission to help people live their best lives, which we love doing on this show. Tons of online talks and speaking engagements, over 80 million media impressions, huge social following, vast global audience, which really is about resonating with people through empathy, encouragement, and techniques to help them achieve their personal health and wellness goals. I love that you're also a wife, a mother of two. I think motherhood brings a whole new layer to everything that we're talking about today. And of course, that resonates with the clients that you work with and the journey that you've been on to become an unstoppable force in health and wellness today. And you're Canadian. You live in Toronto with your family. And your first book, I'll Start Again Tomorrow and Other Lies I've Told Myself, comes out this week. So huge congratulations. You're birthing your first book baby, which trust me, it really is a book baby. Welcome to the show. Sonia, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Absolutely. First of all, Stacey, it's such a pleasure to be here. And I feel like that introduction was just a bit of a breath of fresh air for a moment today, because let me tell you, getting two kids ready for school today amidst like a blizzard and a storm and everything was like, you come out, around 9:30 feeling like broken and defeated and like, that's it. This is where my life ends. So thank you for reminding me that I've like done some things. I'm a real human being. It's such a pleasure to be here today to speak with you. And I'm just so excited to dive into our conversation. As you said, it's like book baby. Oh, and it like comes along with so much of the mess that we experience, when we have real babies. A lot of feelings and bravery and courage. And then you get to this place and you're like, okay, I'm really doing this. And the time is now. And it feels like it's an important message to sort of bring to everyone. And I'm looking forward to diving in with you today to talk about it and just all the things. I mean, amongst all of the wonderful accolades you threw at me, the biggest thing is that I'm deeply honest, because I think I just spent so much of my life being fakey fake. And so I'm just ready to go there with you today.
This show is nothing but honest. I have literally built my brand around authenticity and realness.
I
So
love it.
whether you are bringing it or not, we're going to pull it out of you.
Oh, I love it. I'm ready to go there, Stacey. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So one of the quotes that really resonated with me from your book is, if you keep falling off the wagon, it's time to find a different mode of transportation. And for me, this also meant changing the destination, like not just the transportation, but the destination. And in reevaluating if the goal that I kept chasing was really what I wanted and would bring joy and peace to my life, or if it was more about what I felt like I should do
Mhm.
based on societal beliefs and cultural norms. So I'm wondering, with your background, I imagine that you have kind of a similar experience. If you can talk more to what this quote kind of means for you.
Absolutely, Stacey. I mean, I resonate so deeply with what you said, where it's not only about the transportation and how you're getting there, but where you are trying to get to in such a hurry. I talk about this so much in my book, and my whole TED talk is about this, where, I spent so much of my life chasing some conceptual end destination. My pretty stereotypical Indian parents had sold me this image of success and happiness and beauty. And, it was like, as long as I could follow the formula and do whatever I needed to do to get there, I would arrive at happiness and then be able to live the rest of my life feeling like a happy human being. And when you're growing up in an environment where culturally it's like all 850 of your family friends have the same evaluation criteria, you don't really realize that the evaluation criteria is not something you truly believe in. It's just something that's been woven into the fibers of who you are. And I always felt so much resistance around having to perform to be a certain type of person, right? It's like Indian girls aren't loud. Indian girls don't talk that much. Indian girls are, just the sidekicks to the main character. And, we become doctors or lawyers or engineers. We are supposed to have long, glorious hair. And for those of you listening, you probably can't tell, but I've got like almost no hair on my head at all. Like I'm shaved on one side, essentially. It's like told that this image is what you need to fulfill, and you believe it. And for me, I deeply wove that evaluation criteria into my journey. So I chased being a doctor and I chased being an engineer. And when it turned out that I like suck at chemistry and physics, it was a major letdown for my family and for me to realize I just get to be a businesswoman. And when it came to getting the best grades and getting into the best university or college and all that sort of stuff, it was like the race was on. It wasn't about how I felt in the now, today. It was about doing whatever I needed to do to just get there. And then I got there. I came out of university with, a prestigious degree and was on the dean's list and had landed a like major corporate executive career. It was like unheard of at IBM. And I was marrying a neurosurgeon and had bought a penthouse downtown and was, living what they had positioned as the dream. And I remember every day I woke up feeling like, there has to be more than this. I have to be able to feel better than this. It can't be that every day I wake up feeling kind of empty, kind of unfulfilled, like I'm still searching for things, misaligned in my relationship with my body, filled with negative narrative and anxiety and criticisms, and just looking around at my life being like, I built this with so much work. And now none of it makes sense to me other than my husband. And prior to that, had called off a wedding because even that didn't make sense. It was like there was a major course correct that needed to happen for me. And as you said, not only was the mode of transportation wrong, where I was chasing and taking all of these narratives that had been pushed on me and running with them as fast as I could to get to where I needed to go. More importantly, where I ended up was not at all a reflection of who I really was or what really mattered to me. And it was in that moment that I think my real journey began, starting to really discover what my evaluation criteria actually was. As you said, the what I should care about, really digging into the reality of what I'm going to define as the important components of myself, of my life. How do I want to feel? And what actions do I need to take to be able to start to explore that? And one of the biggest pain points, and I'm sure we're going to get there, given that it's the entire backdrop of my book, is that I was deeply suffering in my relationship with my body. And for me, when it was like, well, I had my MBA, I had my degree, I had the penthouse, I had the job, I had the husband, what else can I chase out there that's going to give me the feeling of being enough, of feeling good in my own skin? When I had no clear next step, it was like, okay, you know what? Maybe the first place for me to really turn to is my relationship with my body, which I had kept completely hidden from others and was something that really colored so much of how I showed up for myself, my actions, my preferences, my desires, and my shame and my hiding and my self loathing and my self sabotage. And I think it was in sort of pivoting my perspective in that moment to say, we're abandoning the destination and we're abandoning the mode of transportation. And we're really starting without a deadline, without an agenda. We're going to actually go within to understand what's there so that I can finally start to put the pieces of the puzzle together to actually make peace with my body and hopefully make peace with me so that then I can make the rest of the decisions and figure out whatever the new destination may or may not be. And what I've realized since then is, good Lord, does the destination keep changing? And that's okay, right?
I think life would be really boring if the destination never changed, right? If you just got there and then you just stayed and, had a life plateau, that doesn't resonate with me. And I didn't get that earlier in life either, right? Like
Yeah.
this idea of chasing and all that stuff. It was like um the South Park underwear gnome scheme plan. Have you right? It was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna do this thing and dot dot dot, and then I'm gonna be happy. It was like I was
Yeah.
really missing the dot part for a
That's
long time.
exactly it for a very long time. And I think we all have that idea, right? It's like that feeling that happiness is just 10 pounds away, right? And if you can get there, no matter what it takes, then you'll arrive at happiness and you can course correct then. And you're like, oh God, what a realization it is to get to a place in your life where you're like, well, no, that's not ever the way it's going to work. And so abandon everything that has been the framework of how you've been living and try to find the real you in there, you know?
Yeah. Can you talk more about how you approach wellness through that kind of empowerment method, but also what I think is so needed, and I'm glad that we're seeing more of this in society, and thank you for using your voice and your platform for this, is this holistic approach to wellness being connected body and mind. This is something that I've been trying to do with the show the last couple of years, is helping people understand that when we hyper focus or obsess on certain parts, it can actually be problematic, right? It can lead
Yes.
to orthorexia or healthism or,
Oh,
different kinds of obsessions versus really thinking of our body as one united place that we have to
yeah.
keep in harmony in order for it all to feel good. Like we can't neglect our
No,
mental health if
no.
we're, only
Yes.
focusing on
The body,
right.
the
Trying to lose the
external.
last 10
Yes.
last 10 pounds, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the reality for me is that, I'd love to say, like, I was just wise beyond my years and I knew that the mind and the body had to be connected. No, Stacey, I was broken. I was broken from my years.
Most of us come from that place of healing, yes.
Right? Right? It was like I I broke from my years and years of being on the hamster wheel of weight loss, focusing solely on the external and not giving any merit to my mental health, my internal well-being, health at all as a concept, right? It was like aesthetics only. Health wasn't even a part of my criteria until I found out I was hypothyroid when I was 25 and was like, what do you mean though? Like, my system doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And, I will say that it was a bit of a, it was like a bit of a shock for me to find out that I was hypothyroid because I just assumed that as long as I managed the outside, the inside would just keep functioning the way it was supposed to. And when I realized that I had put myself into such overdrive for so long, my adrenals were shot, I had literally put my body into shutdown because of the orthorexia, because of the anorexia, because of being bulimic for so long, because of not giving my body what it actually needed, I was like, yeah, no, this is not going to work because I'm not motivated to die. So, while that was sort of like a major moment for me, the real unlayering for me, I think, came from, really recognizing that without really doing the digging to understand where my drivers for obsessive thinness were coming from, I would never be able to stop the chase and it would never be enough, right? Like my values, my limiting beliefs, my perfectionist tendencies, all of them were coming together to create the all or nothing approach, the happiness is only 10 pounds away, the chasing, the I will do what it takes to get there and then course correct. Also, though, not believing that I could ever get there because of my limiting beliefs, keeping myself stuck in that self sabotaging cycle, right? Where it's like one step forward, two steps back, two steps forward, one step back, and you're in the vortex, right? And the noise is soul sucking, but you believe that it's the price that you have to pay to get to where you think you need to go, which is the thin body. And, when I look at it now, I have so much clarity. But at the time, I had no idea that my relationship with my body and my relationship with thinness was exactly sort of the microcosm of what was happening everywhere for me in every aspect of my life. It was about money. It was about thinness. It was about beauty. It was about success. It was about prestige. It was about education. It was about everything that chase, the need to get somewhere to finally feel like you're enough. I was naive enough at the time to think that, like, oh, I have like everything 100% together in every other part of my life. It's just like I can't seem to crack the code on like being thin. That's the issue. And when I went on, my journey within, what I realized is that what was driving me and showing up in that chase to thinness was actually what was coloring the lens that I was looking through around everything in my life. And it was really through that understanding that I was like, oh, this is where wellness begins. The integration of the real self. Because you can have the outer, but if the inner is not being supported by the outer and the outer is not being supported by the inner, it's the vortex of random tactics and actions. You're just spraying stuff against the wall, hoping something is going to stick. And you know as well as I do, Stacey, like it never does, right? Because it's not the aligned version of who you are. And I think when we think of any sort of weight loss goal or, the desire to build strength and fitness or have definition, whatever the aesthetic goal is, and it's different for everyone. But, if we look at those aspects, I think the biggest thing that we fail to realize is that by focusing on the tactics and just the surface level of, okay, can I do that? Can I drink the celery juice that tastes like garbage? Okay, it's keto now. No, it's intermittent fasting now. Okay, this is the next thing. We get caught up in the tactics, not actually connecting with ourselves around how do these tactics actually satisfy what I deeply need for myself to feel good in my body, to feel good in my skin, to feel energized, to feel like I'm not tipping on the brink, to feel like I'm not running the race, clinging for dear life, hoping that I don't sort of get set back again. I think it's like when we really focus on that external noise. And I mean, how lucky are we to live in the world of social media? I like to call it the hashtag world, right? It's like we're in the vortex of 5 ways to shed fat and lettuce chips that are nothing more than lettuce in an air fryer and all of these things that sort of tell us that, if you want it bad enough, you're going to do all this stuff. When we sort of really get caught up in all of that and we don't ask ourselves the questions around, Yeah, but like, what do I really want? Do I want thinness? Do I want vitality? Am I doing this for my health? And getting really clear around the mindset pieces, getting really clear around your evaluation criteria as an individual, your values. And even as I say values, like I feel a bit gross because I can understand that the word like values sounds so high level and you're like, give me something I can use. But the reality is, especially now in the world that we're living in, it's like we're so pulled by what we're told we're supposed to care about that again, we're just spraying tactics everywhere, hoping something's going to get us to have more likes, have more followers, have more external validation to get there. And I think, in understanding that the mindset is the piece that is going to shape the entire journey. And if you don't do the mindset work around your limiting beliefs, around your perfectionist tendencies, around your evaluation criteria, around claiming agency for your life instead of hoping for change, you can do all the tactics and you can reach for all the actions, but they're aimless and they're going to keep you spinning and spiraling in the vortex versus finding a way to use your body as the starting place for living your values as an aligned individual, right? Like, there's not a lot of stuff that we can control. There's a lot of external elements at play in the universe that we live in. But for me, what I realized when I sort of really went on my journey within was that in doing the mindset work and really digging through the nuances of what was driving me, like my why, and getting clear on what mattered and getting clear on the stories I was telling myself, the lies I was telling myself, and getting really clear on my all or nothing approach and what my expectations were for myself. It was through that understanding that then I was able to start utilizing movement, exercise, how I eat, how I create a healthy system for myself to allow me to feel strong and energetic and like I'm living my best self on the outside as well as on the inside. That was the area that I could start practicing all of the mindset work. Yes, I could do it in other areas as well, but it was the place that I had the most control. It was every choice I made. Am I going to wake up and skip breakfast? Am I going to work out today? Am I listening to my body to be like, you know what? You are burnt out and you are tired. Yes, the perfectionist in you would say 7 days a week and nothing less, but actually to honor yourself and how you're feeling and what you really value, you're not going to the gym for 3 days. And to start to work through that alignment in action, I think is really what for me created a deep understanding of wellness, but also how the two ends of the spectrum, the mindset piece and the doing piece, come together to create a scenario where you're never off the wagon again. You're never chasing again. It is a journey then filled with compassion and empathy and self recognition with the ability to course correct and pivot along the way because we're not robots. And so to me, one without the other is futile. And yet, how many of us are still stuck in that place where we're like, I'll just do whatever it takes to get the 10 pounds off or the 15 pounds off or the 100 pounds off. And then it's like, once I'm there, I'll like figure out my mindset then. But until then, just do the thing, just get there. And it's exhausting. And aren't we all so tired of it by now? This is no one's first attempt anymore. And yet we keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result.
It is fascinating how the world has convinced us that it's our fault if we don't do it perfectly enough or, you know, all of those things. So there's so much that you said that I wholeheartedly agree with. And I think you articulated it extremely well. One of the things that I think a lot of people feel is, okay, they hear that, but it's hard to do it, right? It's
Mm,
hard to figure out where to make those changes in your life,
yeah.
when that exact moment is to reframe. And
Yes.
I think that this time of year is a very unique opportunity for that because a lot of people are feeling low self-worth or poor self-esteem or negative self-talk from a failure, and I'm using quotation marks when I say that, of their New Year's resolution. We know that New Year's resolutions have an extremely high drop-off rate around this time of year, if not sooner. And so when I think of that, I think of someone as not having their goals aligned to what their life was, right? Like maybe they had unreasonable expectations or it was built on societal expectations instead of their own on whatever their New Year's resolution was. Me, my New Year's resolution this year is pleasure, and I'm making an active choice in
I
everything
love
that I'm
that.
doing that it incorporate
Oh, Stacy, take
some,
me on that journey with
right?
you.
Like
Girl,
some
I need more pleasure. Yes.
exactly, because the last couple of years have been hard for me. And this year I'm like, you know what? Things have settled. No, the pandemic's not over. No, the world has not gone back to the way that it was before, and it never will. Kind of like a woman's body before she gives birth. There is no like pre-baby body.
There's no bounce back.
Right. Like you have a new body now. It gave birth. We have a new world now. We all went through a
Yes.
global pandemic together. And so, what do I need to do to position myself to live in this new world without trying to chase the old? I'm going to seek pleasure. Where is that? It's different than it was,
Awesome.
4 years ago for me.
Yes.
So, for me, my New Year's resolution is not that I haven't failed. I also have learned things along the way, like,
Yes.
"Oops, I've been signing up for too many things, and it's not pleasurable that
Yes.
I am, you know, feeling
Yes.
like I'm burning the candle at both ends. How am I
Absolutely.
going to solve?" It's a reframe in my mind of, "I'm not a failure." It's not, all this negative self-talk. It's, "I'm learning a lesson here.
Yes.
What can I do about it? And then how can I take it forward?" And I
Yes.
think it is a piece that a lot of individuals have a hard time identifying or in those moments feels so all consuming that the okay, and what do I do about it part is difficult to achieve. How do you suggest people address those kinds of feelings?
Oh, that's a great question. And again, I'm like, frankly, now just jealous of your New Year's resolution. So I'm going to go and sit after this and be like, how do I incorporate more pleasure into my life? So thank you for the little nudge. I think you're so right. This time of year it's so tricky. It's like cold and gray and awful. And we come out the gate after the new year sort of feeling really motivated. I'm saying that in air quotes and committed and like we're ready to be our best selves. And I think without really thinking about what we're reaching for, we sort of set off to sprint. And most people don't really create New Year's resolutions that are sort of like a big bucket like pleasure, I've found, right? They get really into the minutia of my New Year's resolution is that I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to like do my exercise and then I'm going to do the thing and then the thing after the thing and then the thing. And the whole equation with the things is going to come together as like, and then by March, I am feeling and living my best life. And I think, sort of as we talked about earlier, when you set off to do the things, there's no amount of motivation and commitment that is going to hold you to it unless you hate yourself, which I hope nobody out there listening to
Or
is.
loves doing the things?
Well, I mean, if you love doing the things, then I'm not even going to put them in the bucket of things. Then
Exactly.
they're just extensions of what you like to do, and I'm proud of you. But if we're gonna call them things, then I feel like they end up being tactics again, right? Like what is my version of how I can be striving for the end destination by breaking it down into these New Year's resolutions that I may have. And inevitably life gets in the way because momentum is not achieved solely based off of motivation, right? Action is then what creates the results, which then creates the motivation, which then creates more action. And it's a really sort of lovely cycle when you can hit the right notes. But if you're relying on just motivation to carry you, it's dark, it's cold. After 4 days, you just don't want to. And I think one of the first pieces of being in this position where you're maybe feeling disappointed and guilty about not succeeding is to recognize, like, yo, man, we're all in the same boat. There's a reason that we're all like, oh, yes, second week of February, that's when the New Year's resolutions are officially done, because you're not a monster. We're all sort of dealing with that same shift where we come out the gate with this vibe and then it slowly starts to dwindle and there's disappointment. And so, my first suggestion is cut yourself some slack. You are not some monster out there who can't seem to get their stuff together. Nobody can seem to get their stuff together with this approach. And so, you're actually right on track and right on schedule. The second piece to me is really sort of taking the time to look at what those New Year's resolutions were, not with panic and fear that you're never going to get there, but with curiosity. What was that? Why did I say I wanted that or that I thought I was going to do it? Is it because I ate 17 pies over Christmas holidays? Is it because I went through some really tough emotional things and so therefore felt like, you know, finding a more meditative state is what's going to help me? Like, where were the drivers leading you to those decisions around New Year's resolutions? And sitting with it to be like, how do I feel about that today? Not conceptually like, well, I think it's important for everybody to exercise. And of course, it's important to meditate, not the stuff that sounds good, because that's what makes you like a good person who's high functioning. But the stuff that you really feel is important for you to connect with so that you can be living a more honest version of who you are and what matters to you. And I think in just simply approaching your New Year's resolutions with curiosity and a little bit of like exploration, not in a big scary way, but like, what was that? And for me, journaling is an excellent way for me to just like verbal diarrhea out. I find that if I don't journal, I have really excellent self master manipulation skills where I can convince myself into believing things that like maybe aren't even true, but I can like give myself the sales pitch. And so for me, when I journal, that verbal diarrhea sort of takes me where it's going to take me and it allows me the opportunity to really get honest. And so get honest with yourself about what those New Year's resolutions were and really look at what has been getting in your way. If those New Year's resolutions are still things that are deeply important to you, what has been getting in your way? How can we look at this without the judgment and without the self-loathing and be like, okay, let's make this a real detective exercise here and look at what have been my inhibitors. We all want to be the person who's going to wake up in the morning at 4:30 and then by 5 we're at the gym and then by 7 we're doing the green juice and the thing. We want to be the person that can live that high functioning lifestyle. But dude, maybe you're setting yourself up for failure if you are not a morning person and you were hoping coming into January that if you could get it done in the morning, then you'd feel less stressed in the evening. And so it's better if you just sacrifice and you got to do it. When waking up in the morning is really challenging for you and it's not realistic and you're not a morning person. And so you are setting yourself up for failure for something that you really would be doing if you adjusted your schedule. You're just making it the hardest possible version for you to show up to because it sounds sexier? And I think, in looking at it with a fresh set of eyes and really looking at what has transpired between January to now, it's pretty easy when we're being honest to be like, I don't know. It's like I get to 9 o'clock and I can't stop snacking, or, I can't wake up in the morning, or, I wanted to take that class. And so I signed up for it. And, I thought that crochet was going to be my thing that I was going to do this year. And then 4 classes in, it turns out I hate crochet. And now I'm not going, but I feel guilty because I spent the money. Like, where are the narratives Where are the stories that we're telling ourselves about why we're not doing the thing? And are they honest? If they are, great. Let's really reflect on them. And if they're not honest, let's poke holes at the stories and the lies that we're telling ourselves so that we can find a new pivot point for ourselves to, again, define new evaluation criteria for what's actually important to us if we were performing and kind of got it wrong. And then look at the limiting beliefs that we carry about our desires and about how, well, we always make it 3 weeks, but then after 3 weeks, we always fail. So it's like obviously going to happen, but like, let's hope for the best this time. Let's look at those narratives and really question them, throw shade at them, try to actually give yourself the rebuttal around why those things aren't true. And look at the all or nothing approach. For how many people can you say, Stacy, is it as simple as, well, I said that I was going to go to the class and then I skipped the class because I was sick last week and it was legit. Like I was actually sick, but then 4 days went by and I wasn't really feeling much better. And so then by the following week, it was like, do I really need to? And then I skipped 2 classes and then I never went again because I was expecting 100% compliance. 100% compliance wasn't achieved because I missed a class. And that was a slippery slope to my demise because my perfectionism was taking over. And so I think by looking at our New Year's resolutions through those mindset components, giving yourself time to get really curious and a bit playful about it is a really nice opportunity in February to then course correct your actions, set yourself up for a better chance at whatever success is what we're calling it, and put the pieces in place that are really going to enable you to show up to what you're saying you want to do. Whether that's an accountability partner, whether that's changing your schedule, whether it's getting more organized, whether it's getting help, like whatever version you need to crack the code for yourself. One, make sure that what you said you wanted is what you really want. And if it is, look at what the patterns have been for the last 6 weeks. It's major data. And don't get mad at it. It's data. It's there for you to help you course correct. It doesn't mean that you're a failure and that you're never going to crack the code. It's like, okay, well, that system doesn't work. But then over to you to find a new system. And there is no one size fits all formula, which sucks. Because otherwise, I would have given it to you in my book. I would have been like, here are the 3 things, go and succeed. And yes, the
Ugh,
3 things are so important.
any guru that tells you do these things and you will get this result is lying to you.
Yeah.
It's like buy this product or do these things and you will for sure have your goal life and joy will be perfect and life will be everything.
You will have
Like
arrived.
ugh, it makes me so frustrated because there's no accountability to any of that.
No.
Supplements can claim whatever they want to claim, like you were talking about earlier with the social media and
Yes.
the teas and the what. I mean,
Ugh.
it's ugh, anyway.
Bleh.
Yes, so
Yep. We're
much.
now just vomiting. We're now just
Yes,
vomiting in this podcast is what we're doing. It's gross and it's unfair.
yes.
Absolutely.
And it's easy to tell people that because what you're saying is difficult. What you're saying isn't fun.
No.
To look at your own quote unquote failure of
Yep.
6 weeks of data
Yep.
and say, what is it telling me? And how do
Yep.
I, refigure my life? That takes bravery. And
Mhm.
just want to like kudos to listeners if this is something that you're holding yourself to. And it's also okay to just like put it on a shelf and come back to it later. Like, okay, that
Absolutely.
didn't work for me. It feels too heavy for me to kind of figure out how and why I failed if you're feeling like a failure, right? Until
Yes.
you're ready to come back and say, what can I learn from that experience? When you feel ready to take the negative piece
Yes.
out of it, that's when you
Yes.
know it's okay to revisit because
Absolutely.
I love what you said about being a master self manipulator because I am so good at that too. And I've never heard like that turn of phrase before. And how I referred to it is my thing was I would go on fad diets and then I would
Yes.
find all the loopholes.
Oh,
Like
yes.
I would, even though I knew that it was sabotaging whatever the goal that I was
Yeah.
achieving, it was like, I'm this rebel personality, this rebel tendency. kind of person. And so I'd be like, oh, you say I can't do blah, 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 but you didn't say
I'm
I
gonna
can't do.
show you.
But yes, exactly.
Exactly.
So I think if we find ourselves doing things against our own best interest in that sort of way, something is very misaligned, right? And I
Absolutely.
would not catch myself doing those things in those moments. It took a lot of time, years for me to be able to kind of reflect back and be like, wow, that was why.
Yeah.
Why was I making vegetable ice cream for people? What was I doing?
Vegetable ice cream. There we are, 2023. Yes. Yeah. And
Yes.
convincing myself that it tastes so good.
And others can, I'm so sorry, listeners. So here's the thing. I think we've said a lot, and hopefully people can feel like, yes, I feel good about myself going in this positive direction. But it's also can feel so overwhelming with all these things, right? Like when you're starting to evaluate your life, like you were talking about, it was this lens that you were looking through that colored every aspect of your life, not
Yeah.
just your body or your
Yeah.
weight or your mental health, but it also was affecting your relationship,
Yes.
money, job, all these kinds of things that when we have this mindset, it applies to everything. And so then when you're like, okay, I'm going to work on myself, it feels overwhelming to kind of like basically break up the foundation of your
Oof.
own personal
Yes.
life.
Yeah. The house of cards comes crumbling down,
Yes.
and it's very difficult to even want to do that.
No, we don't want anybody's house of cards to come tumbling down. Although it's okay, you can rebuild, right? And like we said at the top of the show, having a changing goal and a changing future, a changing house of cards, it's all makes life interesting. But
Yes.
I want to leave listeners with some positive, actionable, hopefully
Yes.
simple
Would
suggestions
love
that
that.
they can take to be of service and work
Yes.
on themselves or potentially even partners, right? It could be that someone is listening and is like, this doesn't necessarily apply to me, but how do
Yep.
I get my partner to implement these things in their own mindset? Like, how can
Yes.
I be a good, I don't want to use the word partner again, there's no,
Yeah. Like a
have
yes. And
support
whatever.
person
Yes.
with them, but because you can't make anyone do this. This is something
No.
that they need to do on their own.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what ideas you have for people to kind of take away.
I think that's a great question, Stacey, and you're right. Let us let us come back to the fact that it is not all so big and so scary and so hard and that you need to blow up your entire life to try and find who you are. You really don't. And actually, one of the biggest things that I've learned, after I made the major course corrects in my life is that the rest of it is just fine tuning and figuring out how I need to show up for myself in a way that makes me feel the way I want to feel and recognizing that no one out there is going to make me feel how I want to feel. That's an internal job, right? I think one of the easiest places to start is to really get to know yourself. And I don't mean like go take yourself on a date. And I don't think this necessarily means something like journaling, but find your version of truth telling with yourself. Whether that's audio notes, whether that is literal pen to paper journaling, whether that is therapy, whether that is conversations with friends that are going to be more vulnerable and more authentic than you've had before. Find a way to get to know yourself in a little bit of a more honest way, is what I'd say, so that you can get away from the master manipulation a la Stacy Sonia. And take some time to just explore what's there and how you're feeling. And that can be 2 to 5 minutes every day. It can be a body scan. It can just be you lying there and connecting with your body. Think about your toes, think about your ankles, think about your legs, think about your knees, go all the way from the bottom to the top and just see what's coming up for you. And if nothing else is just you lying there in Shavasana, it's okay. Like you need a nap anyway. So, nothing daunting there, but just knowing that you are taking this intention to connect your mind and body to just in a non-scary way explore what's coming up, I think is important because it's through that lens and through that understanding that then you can start to figure out, okay, like what are the small things I can do to show up for myself differently? And I think, Stacey, as a mom, you're going to understand this. Like I give gold stars to my kids for everything, right? Like my 7-year-old is like, I something. I'm like, wow, you showed courage and bravery. You get a gold star. And my 3-year-old is like, I went pee pee. And I'm like, that's amazing. You get a gold star. And I'm dishing out these gold stars to create this sense of like positive feedback and encouragement and momentum. And then when it comes to me, it's like, "Oh, here are the 9,000,000 things I didn't do perfectly and I didn't do well, and here's why I kind of suck." And it's, again, the vortex of the negative narrative. And one of the most simple things I've found for myself, and I'm old school, so, like, I don't even use an app. I, like, use a big giant calendar. It's like a from the dollar store, and I have a gold sticker, and I, like, put it on there for every day that I did the 3 things that I said I was gonna show up to do for myself. And each day those things change. I wake up in the morning, and as I journal, I'm like, what are the 3 things that I feel like I need to do today to honor where I'm at and also help with where I'd like to go in terms of how I'd like to feel? And some days those are I make sure I'm going to drink 2 liters of water. I'm going to sit quietly and listen to affirmations. I'm not even going to say them. I'm not even going to read them. I'm not even going to practice them. I'm just at the stage in my bandwidth that I'm going to sit and listen to somebody else deliver me affirmations for 4 minutes quietly. And then I'm not going to work out and I'm not going to push my body, but I am going to like stretch with a foam roller so that I feel like, again, I could connect with my body and collect more data today around how does my body feel. And yeah, some days those 3 things are I'm going to do a 90-minute workout and I'm going to go donate clothes to the thing. And sometimes they get really big and important and onerous. And some days they're the really simple things. But whereas before it was like, here is the 10-step formula to Sonia living her best life. Now I'm like, Sonia changes every day. Every morning I'm going to feel like I have a different level of energy and perspective that I can offer to myself to cater to what I need a little bit better. And what I have found, and this is why I'm suggesting this, is that the 3 things, no matter how simple and small, are the foundations for that day around which the positive momentum gets built. So it's not 3 things. It ends up being 7. It ends up being 12. It ends up being 15. It ends up being 30. It ends up being so much more than those 3. But those 3, if you can get really clear on what those 3 need to be for you that day and not the ideal version of Sonia, not the I'm going to crack a whip on Sonia, but the real authentic Sonia showing up today who may be tired, who may feel broken, who may feel anxious, who may feel scared, who may feel disappointed in her progress in life, who may feel all the things. What does she need today? And how do I take those 3 really small, simple things and let them set the tone for how I'm showing up and let them be the pieces that I'm building off of? And the last thing I'll say, Stacy, is that, you know, when we look at showing up for ourselves like that every day, that's how we get better and better at actually showing up for ourselves. So it becomes a really positive snowball. And it becomes something that allows for so much more honesty and flexibility as opposed to a regiment that we get stuck in that we can't figure out how to either show up for or run away from. And so, again, would have loved to give you my like 7-step formula here. But really, if I can suggest you just giving yourself the opportunity every day to connect and then to respond in even the smallest of ways, that's you showing up for yourself. And that's also you showing up for your partner, support system, whoever it is that you need to be showing up for. Because again, you're not reaching for these tactics hoping that they're going to stick. You're honoring what you really need. And I found that there's nothing more valuable than that because you just don't necessarily like it because it doesn't sound hardcore enough, but you know what you need.
And I would say, in addition to all the other great things that you mentioned about being really simple about 3 things, is that I have found that in having less expectations on myself, it also allows me to have reasonable expectations of others
Oh,
and to have more grace with others, right? Like that perfectionist tendency that I had for myself created some pretty toxic relationships with other people because I
So
wanted to put
true.
that same level of
Yeah, judgment.
judgment and
This
expectation
the
on them.
scrutiny that you're
Yeah.
coming at yourself and others with, right?
My husband is neurodiverse.
Mm.
He has ADHD so badly. And I would put like the same level of perfectionism on him, even though his brain operates entirely differently than
Yeah.
mine. And when we started to come together about the things that he can do and the things that are really setting him up for failure, it was game changing for our relationship. So I
Yeah.
think like as you work on that relationship with yourself and have these reasonable expectations, it allows you to be like, okay, well, I had grace with myself today that the only thing I was going to do was drink water and,
Yeah.
get the kids off to school and like
Yes.
whatever it is. And I can have grace for him because he's going to have difficult days as well. So
I love
I
that.
love that.
Oh god, and so
Open.
important in a marriage. More importantly, you're like, isn't that how we all want to be showing up? For our partners, just with less of that cutthroat agenda.
Yes,
That leads to
because I
murder.
could certainly sit around and point out all the
Yes.
things that my partner has done wrong or, isn't meeting expectations the same way that I could sit around and have that negative talk with myself. But
Mhm.
instead, I'm going to assume the best. I'm going to have grace. I'm going to have compassion. I'm going to have empathy and some accountability, right? Like we're
Yeah,
still going to be accountable to one another and each other. So,
I love that. I love
all
that.
right.
Stacey, I'm gonna just say one brief thing really quickly.
Yeah.
In the reality of being accountable, it's so nice to have like an accountability person, someone that you can just sort of like even text to be like, these are the three things for today. They don't have to do the three things with you, but here are my three things because there's something different about being able to just acknowledge it out loud sometimes that holds us accountable in a way that feels less alone. And the other piece of it that I found from an accountability perspective and a positivity perspective, like a momentum generating perspective, is I keep like a notebook with me throughout the day. And whether you want to call it gratitude or whether you want to call it just clocking the positivity or like, hey, Sonia, you did good vibes, I write down everything that I throughout the day am like, that was good. You did good. Some version of you did good, whether it's like, I drank the water, you did good. I had an excellent meeting, you did good. Every part of my day where I can be collecting data and writing it down to be grateful for, I keep the list going because what I found earlier is that if I waited until nighttime to be like grateful for stuff, by that point, the kids have broken my spirit. I think I'm about to die. I just want the world to end. And I'm like, everything's horrible and the universe hates me and it's all negative. Whereas if I capture the data throughout the day around, look, nailing this adulting thing. You said you're going to do the thing, you did it. Oh, you handled that situation well, you ate well, anything that it can be. I look at it at the end of the day and I'm like, wow, that was a pretty awesome day of showing up for yourself. Good for you. All right, tomorrow. And it's so simple and it sounds so corny. Again, this is like as corny as gold stars. But what I found as I've gotten older is that like the corny stuff really works, man. You just got to lean into the corny and you'll find that everything starts to feel less painful.
I don't know when gold stars stopped being a thing, like, at
Mm,
what age did we
yeah,
stop getting the positive reinforcement, but it works for all ages,
it
y'all.
does.
It really does. So,
It does.
incorporate the gold star factor into some area of your life is
Yeah.
for me, that involves anytime I do something that's not on my to-do list, I 100% write the thing and scratch it off. Like,
I love it.
I
It's
am
like
not
I
gonna
added it
pretend.
to my to-do list after, and
Yep.
then I scratched it off because I'm so
Yep.
hardcore.
Exactly. Like, and
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
gonna pat myself on the back, like, "Good
Yeah.
job. You did something that wasn't even on your to-do list."
I love that.
Yes. So,
Okay.
okay, listeners, if you wanna hear more about Sonia's story and quitting her career, I'm excited to chat about that with you on
Keep me one.
what that whole spiel was, because I think we're gonna have even more in common in that area. Come on over to patreon.com/thewholeview and listen, which is the best place to ask questions. Because if you love and create the show that we produce ourselves, Patreon is a great way to support the show. But so is just leaving a review, hitting the follow or subscribe button. If you're listening right now and you enjoyed the show, just go tap the fifth star. Just touch it. Just touch it. Of course, if you leave an actual review with words, you'd appreciate it. But it takes no time at all to do that in whatever app that you're using so that others can find us as well. And we put a list of resources in the show notes for you at realeverything.com, but you can find Sonia at Sonia. I was going to say your name wrong again, but it's Jhas.com, but it's
You got it.
spelled Jhas. And also just your name on social for
Yeah.
Instagram. And your book, I'll Start Again Tomorrow, comes out on the 28th of February.
Yes, it does.
So, listeners, if you're listening to this on the day that the show releases, you can pre order, which helps authors get onto all the things that's really important
Yes.
so that their books can
Yes.
end up in stores and all that stuff. But also, I'm sure you can walk into your local bookstore and request a copy. We love to shop
Absolutely.
local as well. So, however you want, if you want to get more of Sonia, we'll put all that information in the show notes for you at realeverything.com. And listeners, I want to thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate your willingness to be open to growth through your own personal changes. No one is perfect, but in listening, learning, and unlearning, we can become better versions of ourselves. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you, Stacy.